What is up, guys? Mason Steele here. Welcome to the first edition of my Rise of the Shadows Hearthstone set review. We're going to look at all the cards revealed so far in this reveal season, and we're coming off the reveal stream, so we're going to take a look at those cards first. Starting real big here with the Warrior Legendary Blastmaster Boom, 7 mana, 7/7 Battlecry. Summon 2 1/1 boom bots for each bomb in your opponent's deck. So if you have one bomb in your opponent's deck, you get almost a functional reprint of the classic Dr. Boom, which was a very good card, and I do believe would be a very good card today in Standard. However, you do need to play these sort of bomb cards. We have the Seaforn Bomber, the neutral 5 mana 5/5, and 2 new warrior cards. We're going to take a look here real quick, and we'll go over them more in depth in a little bit. But they are a little bit underwhelming, a little bit of a tempo loss to invest in bomb futures, whether it's the 5 damage or the tempo you can get from Blastmaster Boom, assuming you're not going to lose the next turn. So yeah, if you get 2 bombs in your opponent's deck, this card is a pretty big swing card. The question is, do we bother in Warrior when we have access to the hero Dr. Boom, right? That's a big grindy finisher that we might not necessarily need to put underwhelming bomb cards in our deck, but they might just all synergize well enough together to be worth it, right? Because once you are Dr. Boom hero and you play Blastmaster Boom, well, your 1/1 boom bots immediately affect the board by rushing into things, killing off other minions, or going face, which is usually a bad thing, but because you set your opponents up with bombs, you could get some surprise lethals. The Clockwork Goblin we're going to talk about, but it is a mech, so it does synergize with both Dino-Matic in the early game and Dr. Boom later on. The weapon, a little bit underwhelming, but it does represent technically 16 damage for 4 mana. Again, we'll look at those cards a little bit more in depth later. But overall, very cool card here. The question is it worth running the bomb synergy? I think it might just be, but we'll definitely have to try it out. Khadgar is yet another 2 mana 2/2 mage legendary. Your cards that summon minions summon twice as many. So kind of a cool combo card here, I guess. You can't really play this on turn 2 like some of the other mage legendaries like Pyros or even Arugul, which could possibly draw 2 cards. This one you're going to have to hold in your hand for later. Most likely we don't have all the information, so unless there's something crazy on turn 3 to combo with, you're probably not playing this on curve. There is going to be at least one mage spell that this will be really good with at 10 mana. You could possibly try to copy Ragnaros, although that is very hard to do now that you can't have Baku Hero Power, and this wouldn't be a Baku card because it's even in the first place. But copying a Ragnaros on turn 9 could be very strong. Let's take a look at the Mage card that this might just synergize with well enough to include. I think Power of Creation is the card that gets played before Khadgar, and then because you're playing Power of Creation, well, maybe you throw in Khadgar. It's a 8 mana epic mage spell. Discover a 6-cost minion. Discover is key here, and then summon 2 copies of it. Because you can discover, you're likely to see, or you're more likely to see, something you actually want to have, which is basically a big taunt. We've seen the Sunwalker on stream. That's probably pretty good. The ideal cards, there's a couple of them. There's a 4/10 and there's a 4/12 taunt, and having 2 of them for 8 mana is a good deal. The issue this card has is that you're discovering, so you're going to see Mage 6-drops. Mage 6-drops aren't very good. In fact, they are very small. If you can get a couple good neutral choices, especially with taunt, this is a good deal. And if you play this on turn 10 with the Khadgar, well, your opponent might have to have a big board clear. Heist Baron Togwaggle is the rogue legendary. It's a 6 mana 5/5 with the battle cry. If you control a Lackey, choose a fantastic treasure. And we know the fantastic treasures are the original Marin of the Fox treasures. And because we're in rogue here, this card is going to be very good. We almost saw this on stream, and we probably should have saw this on stream, but they turn 6 Togwaggle into prep, summon 2 legendaries or summon 2 of the same legendaries. Could have easily ended the game there really quickly. Worst case scenario with this, you have to hold a Lackey in your hand for turn 7 and then try to prep out the treasure. We might finally see preparation get dealt with here, whether it goes to the Hall of Fame or gets nerfed. It probably has to go to the Hall of Fame, but yeah, I don't think preparation is going to exist. This guy is running around much longer. This card seems really good, and it's just way too easy to get the treasure, and the treasures are pretty game breaking. Unidentified Contract, 6 mana rogue spell. Destroy a minion, gains a bonus effect in your hand. The one we saw on stream, probably the strongest version, which was sort of a huge meteor. The other versions are summon a 1/1 poisonous, gives you 2 coins, or you get a copy of the minion you killed. I think in order, we have Turncoat, the Betrayal one the best. Second best, probably the 2 coins. And then the third best, copy a minion you killed. Although I could see that being very strong if you killed something like, well, not the Lich King. That was going to be my example. Maybe something like Ysera. All right, we'll go with a classic card. You killed Ysera, you got Ysera. That seems good, right? That seems very good in a late game thing. Summon a 1/1 poisonous, probably the worst because your opponent, I imagine, can deal with a 1/1 past turn 6. But there are some situations, maybe against a non-ping class, where that card version will shine. I imagine the Meteor one is the one you're looking for. Overall, pretty solid card, and even the worst case scenario, if your opponent has to spend 2 mana to deal with your 1/1 at the very least, well, you sort of got a Walk the Plank, which is a very good card. We're going to have Walk the Plank and this legal at the same time, and Assassinate is going to be legal at the same time, so you could run mono Assassinate Rogue if you wanted a bunch of spells, right? All right, we're going to take a look at the warrior weapon now, the Wrench Caliber. After your hero attacks, shuffle a bomb to your opponent's deck. Well, you're sort of technically getting 16 face damage for 4 mana, but that's not really how it's going to go. The reason you play this is obvious. You're playing this because you're playing Blastmaster Boom, and you absolutely need to get bombs in your opponent's deck before you can play Blastmaster Boom. Is it going to be worth it? It's possible that the sum of the parts, is worth it. I'm not convinced that it's not just better to run a Dr. Boom control deck, but if Blastmaster Boom is worth it, then we will see at least 1 Wrench Caliber in those decks. Clockwork Goblin, the other bomb card, 3 mana, 3/3 mech. This one's a little bit better, I think, than Wrench Caliber because you could play this on curve and not be totally embarrassed. It is a mech, so it synergizes well with Dino-Matic and the Dr. Boom hero. In the late game, you can rush this minion in as a removal card. So this is the one that probably sees play as a 2-of with Blastmaster Boom, and maybe you throw in 1 copy of the Wrench Caliber. Evil Cable Rat, 2 mana, 1/1 beast. Battlecry, add a Lackey to your hand. We see the Lackeys are very good. Let's take a look at the Lackeys. This is probably not a 2-drop. You can think of this more like a 3-drop, and it possibly a very good 3-drop, and possibly one we see sort of take over the meta because it is neutral. So there's a Ethereal Lackey, 1 mana, 1/1 discover spell, which is powerful. Basis Lackey, 1 mana, 1/1 summon a random 2-cost minion, which is tempo, possibly. Goblin Lackey, 1 mana, 1/1 battlecry, give a friendly minion 1 attack and rush. So if you play this with the beast, you could go 3 mana, 2/1 rush and a 1/1. It's not amazing, but it's something. Kobold Lackey, which is quite strong, 1 mana, 1/1 deal 2. And Witchy Lackey, battlecry, transform a friendly minion into a one that costs 1 more. So if you play the beast as a 3-drop, you could play basically get a random 3-drop and a 1/1 for 3 mana. Is that good? It's not really good. But you could do it, right? You could do it and not be embarrassed. Dr. Boom Scheme is a 4 mana warrior spell. It says gain 1 armor for 4 mana. Not good, but it upgrades each turn. Not a great top deck, but if this is in your opening hand and the game goes late, well, that's a lot of armor. I'm not convinced this is going to see play over Shield Block. I think this is going to act as Shield Block 3 and 4. So, yeah, I think it's just worse than Shield Block. Even though it has the possibility to gain 20 armor or whatever, if you're in that point in the game, you're probably already Dr. Boom at that point, maybe, and then you're already, gaining 7 armor every once in a while. I don't think Warrior needs this necessarily. Messenger Raven, 3 mana, 3/2 beast. With the battlecry, discover a mage minion. I do think this card is good. Definitely going to see it play in any deck trying to do bad things with naughty things with Antonidas and or Sorcerer's Apprentice, because this is another way to get both set cards. Hench Clan Burglar, 4 mana, 4/3 pirate. Discover a spell from another class. They mentioned on the stream that they're turning away from the discover a or get a card from your opponent's class to make it so the rogue versus rogue matchup is less lame, I guess, is the way they put it. And discovering a spell is powerful. When you're playing tests, you don't really want spells, but because you could discover a spell, you can avoid the situation of pyroing yourself in the face. You're going to pick the Blizzard, Nova, Flame Strike, cards that can't go wrong, right? Cards that only benefit you. So very strong test card. It is a pirate, which matters. Overall, this card might see a lot of play because you're kind of getting a lot for 4 mana. Traveling Healer, 4 mana, 3/2 Divine Shield, restore 3 health. Now, it doesn't say to you, it says to anything. So I think this card, because it can heal your minions, is better than it looks. The 3 drops nowadays generally are 3/4. And so one of the better things to do would be to play a 3/4, kill something with it, and then heal to full. Then all of a sudden you have a board of a 3/4 and a 3/2 Divine Shield. I imagine you're in pretty good shape there. So yeah, this card might sneak into constructive play. It got mentioned on the reveal stream as an arena card, but who knows, right? Light Warden is still around. Happy Eagle's gone, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is healing 3/4s on turn 4 quite often. The other Mage Legendary is a 10 mana 4/12 Dragon Kaligos. Your first spell each turn costs 0. Battlecry, discover a spell. Now, we just saw a pretty nice one to get the 8 mana summon 2 6-drops into play. They won't necessarily have taunt, but they very well could have taunt, right? So this is a powerful card. If you're holding a Flame Strike, a Blizzard, Frost Nova kind of thing, you can protect yourself with said AoE. Or if you're missing an AoE, well, try to discover one. So very strong card. Might just be better than Ysera, which is pretty good. So yeah, we'll see. I do think this card sees play in any sort of control mage deck. Neutral Legendary, Chef Nomi, 7 mana 6/6 with Battlecry. If your deck is empty, summon 6 6/6 elementals. Whoa, say that 6 times fast. Yeah, this will end the game if it's your turn. It doesn't defend itself, which is a pretty big problem. I see this getting played in exactly Paladin because you have access to 2, quote, ice blocks. The ice block won't save you from the fatigue damage, but your opponent will not be able to kill you by playing 2 of these in a row. And that is technically a win condition, right? Play a full board of these and hope your opponent can't deal with it. And then ice block for 2 turns. Archvillain Rafam is the Warlock Legendary, 7 mana 7/8 taunt with the Battlecry. Replace your hand and deck with legendary minions. So the first thing that pops out for me is the stat line. 7 mana 7/8 taunt I think is better than it might initially look, and it's a very imposing presence, and it's just good stats, honestly, right? It's not War Golem by any means. Taunt is very good, as we saw with the Lich King. Lich King was good for many reasons, but one of the big reasons was the Lich King was so good is that he had taunt, and this does as well. We're losing Gul'dan, so Warlocks do need a way to sort of close out or finish grind out games. This would be a way to put your opponent under pressure. Landing huge legendary minions turn after turn definitely puts your opponent in a bad situation a lot of times. So I could definitely see this being the new go-to Warlock finisher card. Forest's Aid is an 8 mana twin spell. Summon 5 2/2 treants. Twin spell means you get another copy in your hand. This card is going to have to be played as a sort of late game grind out card. It doesn't come early enough to realistically threaten your opponents, but it is threatening because of cards like Savage Roar. But again, it's so expensive that you're going to have to build your deck to win a grind out battle. We're losing Malfurion, so maybe this is the sort of thing that you need to sort of grind games out, right? Forbidden Words, 0 mana pre-spell. Spend all your mana. Destroy a minion with that much attack or less. Cool card here. Very strong card. Might go into every single priest deck. I think it will, because even though it doesn't replace Shadow Word Death, it gets close to replacing Shadow Word Pain. In the early game, you can use it just like a Pain. And in the late game, because you can play a card first and then play this, you can deal with, cards that might otherwise be hard to deal with, like cards like Ysera, right? You play your 6-drop. They play Ysera on 10 or 9. On 10, you play a 6-drop, and then you spend your remaining mana to kill Ysera for 4, and that's a good deal. So at the very worst, you're kind of spending your whole turn to kill something big. But at the very best, it gets, it's like all the advantages of Shadow Word Pain with the versatility of also being a Shadow Word Death. So I do think you're just going to run 2 Forbidden Words in every priest deck, and then you probably run 1 death, maybe 2 deaths, right? But at the very least, I think you run 2 Forbidden Words and 1 Shadow Word Death. Evil Miscreant, 3 mana 1/5 with a combo. Add 2 random Lackeys to your hand. Lackeys are very good. Ironically, Lackeys are good combo cards, so if you're running 2 Evil Miscreants, once you play and combo the first one, comboing the second one gets much easier. There is precedent of rogue 3-drops having combo, so cards like Backstab, cards like the Coin, and Half the Games make it pretty easy to actually combo with on turn 3. So this card is going to be good because we have reasons to play Lackeys. We saw the new Legendary, And that's probably reason enough to play this card. Spellwar Jeweler, one of the first cards revealed, is a 3-mana 3/4. So it's got good stats. It's nice to see 3-drops moving toward that 3/4 stat line as a baseline. I think your hero can't be targeted by spells or hero powers until your next turn. So not quite the monk, right? Because it doesn't protect you as long as it's in play. It protects you guaranteed for that next turn. So maybe Blizzard was scared of the Paladin OTK combo. They need to print this. Maybe there's a lot of Mage out there burning you down. Who knows? But cool card to have access to. I think this probably should have been epic. I'm a little bit worried with this set. Much like in Guru, the power is going to be higher because we are wiping standard. So I have a feeling a lot of these epic cards are going to be must-crafts. This one would have been a nice one, I think, for them to print at epic. Hagatha Scheme. 5 mana, deal 1 damage to all minions. Not a good deal, but it upgrades each turn. So you keep this in your opening hand on turn 5. Well, it deals 5 damage to everything. So very similar card to Volcano. I think it is probably better than Volcano in general. Not quite a good at saving you as a top deck on turn 5, but because it sort of absolutely wipes the board in a long game, and because you have 5 more mana to work with in the late game or tempo, right? You swing the game around. You clear the entire board, probably guaranteed, right? Deal 10 damage to everything, and then you have 5 mana to rebuild your board with. So cool card here, and I do think it's going to see quite a bit of play. Swamp Queen Hagatha is a 7 mana 5/5 Shaman legendary. This battle cry, add a 5/5 hoard your hand, which is going to be a 5-cost card. You also are going to teach it 2 shaman spells, which means when you play this, you're going to discover 2 spells. I think you get 1 targeted, 1 not targeted, but I'm not too sure. And once you play the 5 mana 5/5, it battle cries those 2 spells. The cool thing about this is that it can't go wrong. If you discover a card like Lightning Bolt or Lava Burst, one of the targeted spells, you get to choose the target much like you would a Fire Elemental. So very powerful card here. Is it too slow to work? It depends. I think Shaman do have the control tools to make this quite powerful, though. Hunter Legendary Oblivitron is a 6 mana 3/4 mech. Death Rattle. Summon a mech from your hand and trigger its Death Rattle. So the stats are pretty bad. You're going to have to probably combo this with Fireworks Tech or maybe Flark's Boom Zuka. A lot of the cards that go well with this would also go well with Flark's Boom Zuka, namely the Mechanical Whelp, right? If this dies with a Mechanical Whelp in your hand, the 2/2 comes out for free, and you summon a 7/7 for free. And then when the 2/2 dies, you get another 7/7. We are losing both Play Dead and Terror Scale to combo with this card. But because of Fireworks Tech, the 4 cards I just mentioned, there might be something to mess around with, right? Lazul Scheme, Priest spell. It's an epic, 0 mana. Reduce the attack of an enemy minion by 1 until your next turn, and it upgrades each turn. So if this is in your hand long enough, you can put anything down to 0. The big thing and the scary thing with this is the way it's going to be used with exactly Cabal Shadow Priest to steal basically any minion given enough time past turn 6. And I don't think this gets used in any other way, just because that 2 mana tempo or 2 card tempo swing of 4/5 plus steal anything will be very powerful. Rakam Scheme, 3 mana Warlock spell. Summon a 1/1 imp for 1, and then upgrades each turn. So if you have this in your opening hand, on turn 3, you can spend 3 mana to get 3 1/1s. That's not a good deal. There are cards that are better than that. The card that's closest to this is the 4 mana Summon 4 imps, but that's guaranteed 4, and probably a better top deck than this one. So it's interesting, right? Like, this has the opportunity to fill your board for 3, and the 4-drop, was capped at 4. You generally don't need much more than 4, though. Although I will say this synergizes much better with Grim Rally in the late game, because you can sort of unboard lock yourself with Grim Rally. And I think that might be the tiebreaker, making this card better than the 4 mana Summon 4 imps, which was not really constructed playable. More of a fun card to play with Witch's Cauldron, which I definitely did do and will do with Reform Scheme. Omega Devastator is a 4 mana 4/5 warrior mech with the battle cry. If you have 10 mana crystals, deal 10 damage to a minion. That's obviously very good once you have 10 mana. We're not really going to talk about that mode too much, because it's the other stuff I find more interesting. The fact that it's so big, and it has Yeti stats when it doesn't really need to. It's a mech when it doesn't really need to. And both those things add up to just a very, very strong card. Probably the strongest card revealed so far. It just works really well in Warrior. Once you're Dr. Boom, The mech tag really does matter, right? Rushing minions and dealing 10 to something is basically a 2-for-1. It's almost a 3-for-1, right? Because you're killing a minion and it survives, probably. You're dealing 10 to something. So you got the automatic 2-for-1 with Rush, and then you have the 3-for-1 with the deal 10. So after Dr. Boom in late game, this card's nuts. Even in the early game, being a mech is very important because of it combos with Dynomatic on turn 5. You play this turn 4. Maybe your opponent can't deal with it. Maybe they start going face because they don't want to sort of give your guy taunt. They go face. You play Dynomatic. You absolutely punish them, clear them out, and you still have your Yeti to smash with. So also very good that it's a mech because of Omega Assembly. You're likely to see this in the late game. Again, just a very strong card. The reason I'm not going to give it a design hit because it's blatantly too strong. They made it strong for a reason. They were trying to push Warrior away from Baku Warrior. They tried and unsuccessfully tried to do it last expansion with the Dragon cards. A lot of the key Dragon cards were even, and that didn't sort of push Warrior away from playing Baku. This was designed who knows how long ago before they decided to ban Baku again, and so that's why it's pushed so hard. It's possible they might have to tweak this card before it gets released. I think it deserves a tweak now that Baku Warrior is no longer a thing. This is going to get played in every single Warrior card. It is a 5-star card, because if you're playing Warrior right now, you're guaranteed to play this. You're guaranteed to play Dynomatic, and you're guaranteed to play Dr. Boom, I think. Improve Morale says deal 1 damage to a minion if it survives. Add a Lackey to your hand just for 1 mana. Interesting card here. Probably doesn't make a 30-card list, but it has synergies because of cards like Acolyte of Pain, cards like Rotface and Growmash. There are reasons, especially in Warrior, to sort of enrage your minions. Madel Mazul is the last card we're going to look at today. It is a Priest Legendary, 3 mana, 3/2 with the Battlecry. Discover a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. So you do get some information by playing this. I think this gets played as a tech card in a control meta where the best thing to do is to copy something like Dr. Boom Hero Power. Overall, pretty boring design. It's something we've definitely seen before, although it is a little bit of a twist because you get to see 3 cards from your opponent's hand. So that concludes part 1 of my Rise of the Shadows set review. As always, if you guys agree or disagree with anything I said, please feel free to comment below. Hope to see you guys back for part 2.